There is a point in the spiritual life that completely separates those who simply like God from those who truly build a life with God. And that point is not found in emotion, not in momentary enthusiasm, not in good days. It is found exactly in the days when you don't want to, the days when you don't feel anything, the days when everything inside you tells you to leave it for later. And it is exactly here that the life of John Wesley reveals a powerful secret, a principle that, if you understand it deeply, can completely transform your spiritual discipline and the way you relate to the Word of God. Because he didn't read the Bible only when he felt like it. He read it every single day, even when he didn't want to. And that sounds simple. But that is exactly what most people fail to sustain. Because here is a truth that few accept. What transforms your life is not what you do when you are motivated. It is what you maintain when you are not. And this is the point where almost everyone fails. Because it's easy to open the Bible when you feel inspired, when something has touched your heart, when you feel willing. But what happens when that's not there? When there is no emotion, when there is no interest, when it feels dry? Most people stop. But it is exactly in that moment that transformation truly begins. Now pay very close attention to this, because this point is deep. Spiritual discipline is not proving that you are strong. It is continuing even when you are weak. And that is exactly what marked John Wesley's life. He didn't negotiate with his feelings. He didn't wait to feel. He simply did it. And that built something inside him that did not depend on circumstances. It built stability. Now hold on to this, because this changes everything. When you decide to read the Bible every day, regardless of how you feel, you begin to train your mind to obey a pattern, and not emotions. And that strengthens you in a way few people understand. Because emotions are unstable, but patterns create consistency. Now observe this deeply. Every time you choose to read, even when you don't feel like it, you are winning an invisible battle, a battle against laziness, against distraction, against spiritual neglect. And that victory, even though it seems small, is extremely powerful over time. Now pay attention, because this is key. You don't need to feel in order to be transformed. You need to remain. And that completely changes how you see reading the Bible. Because now it's not about feeling like it. It's about commitment. Now let me confront you with something direct. If you only read the Bible when you feel like it, you will never build spiritual depth. Because your consistency will depend on something that changes all the time. And that creates instability. Now hold on to this, because this point is extremely important. Daily reading is not just about gaining knowledge. It is about shaping your mind. Yes, shaping your mind, because what you consume daily shapes the way you think, and the way you think shapes the way you live. Now pay very close attention. When you read the Word of God every day, even without feeling, you are aligning your thoughts with something greater than your emotions, and that changes your decisions. Now observe this. There will be days when you read, and you will feel deeply. You will understand clearly. You will be impacted. But there will also be days when you read, and it will seem like nothing happened. And here is the mistake many people make. They think those days don't count, but they do, and maybe they are the most important ones, because those are the days that prove your discipline is real. Now hold on to this, because this is transformative. God does not work only on the days you feel something. He works in quiet consistency, in repetition, in daily faithfulness, even when you don't notice. Now pay attention, because this is deep. There are changes that don't happen visibly, but are happening internally. Your mind is being renewed. Your patterns are being adjusted. Your sensitivity is being developed. And all of this happens little by little, day after day. Now let me show you something few understand. Daily, Bible reading creates a foundation that sustains you in difficult moments. Because when you need it, what you have read is already inside you, and that makes a difference. Now hold on to this, because this is essential. You cannot wait until you need the Word to start consuming it, because when that moment comes, it may be too late to build what should already be within you. Now pay very close attention. John Wesley understood that daily discipline was what sustained his spiritual life, not extraordinary moments. And that is what you need to understand as well. Now observe this deeply. Every day you open the Bible, even without desire, you are saying something powerful that your spiritual life does not depend on your mood. It depends on your decision, and that positions you differently. Now hold on to this, because this is confronting. You cannot allow your feelings to control your discipline. You must allow your discipline to control your feelings, and that requires maturity. Now pay attention, because this closes this first part with strength. The reason why John Wesley read the Bible every day, even when he didn't want to, was not because he always felt like it. It was because he understood that it was essential, non-negotiable, part of his life. And if you truly want to grow spiritually, you will need to reach that level as well. So if this is speaking to you right now, write in the comments, "I will remain even without feeling," leave your like, and subscribe to the channel. Because this is not just motivation, this is real construction. Now you need to go even deeper, because understanding that you need to read the Bible every day already changes a lot. But it still doesn't solve the main problem, which is maintaining this practice when life gets busy, when your mind gets distracted, when fatigue sets in, and especially when the desire simply disappears. Because here is the reality that few admit. It is not the lack of knowledge that prevents spiritual growth. It is the lack of consistency. And this is exactly where the life of John Wesley becomes such a powerful example, because he did not depend on motivation to continue. He depended on structured decision, and that completely changes the game. Because when you depend on motivation, you start strong, but you don't sustain it. But when you build a system, you remain. Now pay very close attention to this, because this can immediately transform your practice. You need to stop treating Bible reading as something you do when you have time, and start treating it as something that already has a defined place in your day. Something fixed, something clear, something non-negotiable, because everything that doesn't have a defined place ends up being postponed. And what is constantly postponed eventually gets abandoned. Now hold on to this, because this point is extremely practical. You need to reduce the difficulty of starting. Yes, reduce the difficulty, because many times you don't start not because you don't want to, but because it feels like too much work. You think you need to read a lot, understand everything, feel something deep, and that creates a mental barrier. Now observe this: the greater the demand, the greater the resistance. And here is the secret that few apply. Start small, but start every single day. It can be a few verses, it can be one chapter, but it must be consistent, because the power is not in the size, it is in the repetition. Now pay attention to this, because this changes everything. You don't build depth by reading a lot once in a while. You build it by reading a little every day. And this requires humility, because you need to accept starting simple. Now hold on to this, because this point is deep. Daily reading is not about impressing. It is about transforming. And transformation happens in the process, not in isolated intensity. Now let me show you something you need to overcome: distraction. Because today, everything around you competes for your attention. Your phone, social media, worries, racing thoughts, and all of this tries to steal the exact moment that should be dedicated to the Word. Now pay very close attention. You will not be able to maintain consistency if you do not protect this time. Yes, now protect it. Turn off distractions, create a quieter environment, reduce interruptions, because without protection, your discipline weakens. Now hold on to this because this is essential. What is important must be protected, not just desired. And this fully applies to your spiritual life. Now observe this deeply. John Wesley didn't just read, he prioritized the environment of reading. He created the conditions that made it possible. And this is something you need to apply as well. Now pay attention to this because this is key. The quality of your attention determines the depth of your reading. You can read and absorb nothing if your mind is scattered, or you can read a little and be deeply impacted if you are present, and that changes everything. Now hold on to this because this is transformative. You need to learn to read with intention, not just out of obligation. Ask questions, reflect, absorb, even if it's little, but with attention. Now let me confront you with something direct. Reading without attention is almost like not reading, because it doesn't produce transformation. Now pay very close attention. Another challenge you will face is the feeling of repetition. You may think, I've already read this, I already know this passage, and little by little, that takes away your interest. But here is the point you need to understand. The word does not change, but you do. And every time you read, you are at a different level. So the same text can speak something completely new, depending on your moment. Now hold on to this because this is deep. It's not the text that needs to be new. It's your perception that needs to be sensitive. And that develops through consistency. Now observe this. There will be days when you read and you won't feel anything special. And here is the mistake many make. They think that means it wasn't worth it. But it was, far more than you imagine, because on those days, you are strengthening discipline, not emotion. And discipline sustains your spiritual life. Emotion does not. Now pay attention to this because this is key. You cannot measure the value of reading by what you feel in the moment. You must measure it by what it builds over time. And that requires a long-term vision. Now hold on to this, because this point is extremely important. Daily, Bible reading is like planting invisible seeds. You don't see immediate results, but over time, you begin to notice change in your mind, in your choices, in your sensitivity, and this happens naturally, but consistently. Now let me ask you a direct question and answer it honestly. Are you willing to continue even when it feels like it's not working? Because this is the point that defines everything. It's easy to continue when you see results. Hard is continuing when you don't. But that is exactly where transformation happens. Now pay very close attention because this closes this part with strength. The secret of John Wesley was not feeling more, it was remaining more. And if you learn to do this, if you learn to read even without desire, protect this time, simplify the process, and remain consistent, you will build a spiritual life that is solid, deep, and stable. So if this is speaking to you right now, write in the comments, I will read even without feeling, leave your like, and subscribe to the channel. Because this is not just a teaching. This is a shift in pattern. Now you have reached the deepest level of all, the point where almost no one arrives, because here it is no longer just about discipline, no longer just about consistency, no longer just about overcoming the lack of desire. Here it is about real transformation, internal, silent, continuous, the kind of transformation that makes no noise at the beginning, but completely changes who you become over time. Because there is something most people never realize. Daily reading of the Word is not just a spiritual practice. It is a process of shaping the mind. And that changes everything. Because while many read seeking to feel something immediately, those who remain begin to notice something much deeper. They begin to think differently. Yes, think differently. And that is exactly what marked the life of John Wesley. He didn't just read the Bible, he was shaped by it. And that is another level. Now pay very close attention, because this is revealing. You don't become spiritual just by what you feel. You become spiritual by what begins to dominate your thoughts. And what dominates your thoughts shapes your decisions. Now observe this deeply. When you read the Word every day, even without desire, you begin to replace old patterns with new ones. Impulsive thoughts begin to decrease. Uncontrolled reactions begin to be adjusted. Decisions become more conscious. And this does not happen instantly. It happens cumulatively. Now hold on to this, because this is powerful. Every day of reading, even simple, even quiet, even without emotion, is building something inside you. Something invisible, but extremely solid. Now pay attention, because this changes the way you see the process. You are not just reading the Bible. You are being trained by it. Trained to think better, trained to react better, trained to live with more awareness. And this impacts every area of your life. Now observe this. There comes a point where you begin to notice something different. You no longer need to force yourself to remember. The Word begins to arise naturally in your mind, in decisions, in difficult moments, in unexpected situations, and this is the result of consistency. Now hold on to this, because this is transformative. What you repeat daily begins to become part of you. And when the Word becomes part of you, you no longer live the same way. Now pay very close attention, because this is key. There is a level where you no longer read just out of discipline. You feel a need. Yes, a need. Just as the body needs food, your mind begins to need the Word. And when you don't read, you notice it. You feel the difference. You feel the absence. And that is a sign of real transformation. Now let me take you even deeper. There is a level where reading stops being just a moment in your day and becomes a lens through which you see everything. You begin to interpret situations differently. You begin to respond with more wisdom. You begin to avoid mistakes you would have easily made before. And that completely changes your practical life. Now hold on to this, because this is confronting. Many want to live a wise life, but do not feed their minds with what produces wisdom. And that creates a void. Now pay attention. You cannot expect to make better decisions if you are not renewing your mind daily, because your decisions are a reflection of what is inside you. Now observe this deeply. Consistent reading of the Word creates a kind of stability that does not depend on circumstances. There may be pressure. There may be difficulty, there may be uncertainty, but you remain more steady, more centered, more aware, and that makes all the difference. Now hold on to this, because this is essential. The greatest benefit of daily reading is not what you feel in the moment, it is who you become over time. And this requires vision, because deep transformation is not fast, it is progressive. Now pay very close attention, because this brings everything to a close. The reason why John Wesley read the Bible every day, even when he didn't feel like it, was not because he always felt something special. It was because he understood that it was shaping who he was. And that is what you need to understand as well. It's not about desire. It's not about emotion. It's about decision, repetition, formation. Now let me ask you the most important question of all, and answer it honestly. Do you want to feel something momentary, or become someone transformed? Because that choice defines everything. It defines your consistency. It defines your depth. It defines your spiritual life. Now hold on to this, because this is the moment of decision. You can continue depending on your feelings, reading only when you feel like it, living an unstable faith, or you can decide to remain, even without desire, even without emotion, even without immediate results, and build something real, something solid, something deep, something that lasts. So from today on, do not negotiate your reading. Even without desire, read. Even when tired, continue. Even without feeling, remain. Because that is exactly how you are transformed. So if you've made it this far and decided to change your spiritual level, write in the comments, "I will read even without feeling," leave your like, and subscribe to the channel. Because this is not just content. This is a call to real transformation. And never forget this. It's not how much you read in one day that changes your life. It's what you sustain over many days. Because consistency builds what intensity can never maintain.